I'm going to hand over to Gemma. She made a film recently, which we're going to show, called Bam Now, which were young men she interviewed, and I'll basically leave it to her to explain what it's all about. Gemma Cairney, thank you.
I don't think my mic's... I was about to say, I've got a really loud voice, so it'll be fine. Firstly, I'm really impressed with how many of you that are here on a Friday morning. Incredible. And I just got told that Black Friday is making everything delayed in London. I mean, what? Like, what even is that? I mean, it's part of our problem. We were just talking about society, but it's a lot to do with advertising and marketing too. So, yeah, super impressed that you're here on a Friday morning. I'm Gemma Cairney. I work on the radio. I do predominantly Radio 1, as well as many other things. At the moment on Radio 1, I do the Wednesday night shift, which is The Surgery. And it's an hour speech-based radio speaking to young people with problems. We have a trained doctor in the studio, thank goodness, because I'm definitely not of any expertise except for having a big gob and an inquisitive brain. I've spent a few years coming to WOW Festival. I love Women of the World Festival. I think Jude is extraordinary. I think this space is extraordinary. And I think being a man is as interesting in terms of a concept and an idea. And I made a film called WOW Now, which was kind of exploring the issues of younger women today, where I literally spoke to everyone here at the Southbank Centre and thought, all I want to do is get in schools and speak to some young people. And the female experience of doing that earlier on this year was quite extraordinary. And it made me feel really urgent inside as to wanting to help young women, especially the women of our future. I feel like there's a lot of pressure. And it led me as a journey to want to do the male equivalent. I wanted to do exactly the same workshop, which is just going in, speaking to young boys, asking them about whatever is on their mind, any pressures that they may feel, in a very simple workshop format. And it was quite a different experience. So I would like you to watch the film. Let's play it. Earlier on this year, I made a short film called WOW Now about women of the future. I wanted to know what was going on in the hearts and minds of young girls and to find out the issues that they were facing about becoming women. It was absolutely fascinating and prompted quite a big reaction. I decided that when I heard about being a man festival that I wanted to do the equivalent. It feels like a lot of the time that boys don't really get a voice to say how they're feeling. I wanted to take something to the Southbank Centre that was an investigation of what being a man actually is. When I say being a man, what does that mean to you? Don't be shy.
I don't know, just masculinity in general. I'm not really sure.
There's no basic rules.
I guess try not to rely on others to help you.
Strong, not showing any emotion.
You're not supposed to express your feelings.
Kind of feel obligated to kind of push them down instead of, actually talking to people about them.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Set an example for the younger generation.
And not be the child that you want to be.
Having responsibilities and taking care of yourself and other people.
If you're a man, you have to supply your family and look after them.
All right, let's talk about girls, because it's come up twice. What do we want to know about girls?
Something you need.
Girls.
Yeah. 1 minute, you're laughing with them, and then the next minute, they look like they're gonna slap you sometimes.
Girls say that boys don't understand girls, but then to be honest, girls don't really understand boys.
And what do you think girls like in a boy?
Don't have a clue.
Good banter.
Why is banter the best?
Because I think it's good until it goes too far.
Someone takes the mick out of someone and the teacher's just like, why did you do that? It was just banter. And then it just makes it alright, but it doesn't.
Banter is meant to be something that's funny and it's not meant to offend the other person.
But when it becomes racist and slavery's brought in, it just annoys me.
Something that's come up with every single group of boys.
PE.
No.
Sex.
Yes.
Most boys our age don't even need sex education. Ask anyone in the school, any boy, what is sex. They will tell you like 100 details.
They teach you all the basic stuff in school, and then if you want to know a bit more, just Google it.
A lot of adults think that loads and loads of young boys are just constantly on the internet looking at porn.
I've never met anyone who's my age that has ever watched porn. I understand why they'd think it, but it's quite confusing, to be honest. Yeah.
What is the satisfaction of bullying someone?
What is classed as failure?
When men and women become equal.
Do you think boys and girls are equal?
Yes. People who are in higher powers and mostly male.
Owning over women, that's not really nice. Like women can do their own thing.
More major organisations should start being treated equal.
It's definitely a lot better than it once was, but you need to focus on it a bit more.
In a way, women are stronger than men if you think about it.
Yeah.
Emotionally, definitely.
I want to know why some men leave their child at birth.
What will looks do for us in the future?
I want to know why so much homework.
Is there pressure on guys to look a certain way?
No. Guys have to be hench.
You're expected to be quite bulky.
Do you think the gym's really important for boys?
Yeah, because then you get the muscles and basically then you get the girlfriends.
Obviously, when it comes to stuff like clothes, that's the one factor that boys can actually shine in. So they will go for designer clothes rather than average clothes.
I do care how I look in a certain way, not over obsessively.
You need to have your shower and stuff in the morning, cream,
You just high in the morning.
Yeah, it's a stress.
How worried are you about GCSEs?
Very, yeah.
If you don't do perfect in your GCSEs and that, you're not going to succeed in life.
The grading boundaries change, so it's different every year. So everyone also feels pressure when it comes to a new year.
When you got homework and you got piles of it, it's like there's no time to have rest.
I can't handle being under pressure. Yeah.
What puts you under pressure?
Schoolwork sometimes.
How old are you?
14.
The stress sort of builds up to a point where you just have to release it.
I get really mad and I don't know why, I just do.
I feel fidgety and I feel like breaking my pen.
If you fail the exam, then you fail your teacher and you fail your parents and all your family, so it's just really stressful.
So there we are, my documented investigation into being a man. I think firstly, I want to say thank you. I don't know if any of the boys are here, but if anyone that kind of was a part of it, and they are funny and lovely and eloquent and brilliant, and that was the loveliest kind of discovery that young men are brilliant. I'd like to welcome as well my panel. A big round of applause for these guys. Who are ya? I'm going to start with you. I want you to just kind of big yourself up. The credentials, everything, express to the kind of whole crew who you are and why you're on my panel.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello. Especially hello to all the schools. Big up all the boys who are here. Hello. I want to hear questions from you guys. Okay. So listen, okay, my name is Raymond Antrobus. I am a poet. I've been working in education for the past 3 years. I'm from East London, Hackney. I'm one of the first of 6 people in the world to have something called a spoken word education master's degree, which just basically means I use poetry and performance to go into classrooms and to teach and educate.
And he's also extraordinary. He's an amazing spoken word artist, especially.
Thank
you really
Thank
are.
you.
Your turn.
My name's David Brockway. I run a project that's pretty similar to what we just saw in the video, actually. We go into schools around the UK and create conversations with boys around a lot of the concepts we're discussing today. So masculinity and being a man is at the root of a lot of it. But really what we're doing is going in there to open up a conversation, to ask boys to express themselves. So again, I echo Raymond's sentiments. I hope the boys do so today. What makes us unique amongst other schools is that we're never going into a school to say violence is bad because you should act this way. we're going into schools and asking boys, what is it about being a man that makes you feel you need to act in a certain way? And we spend a long time having that conversation, allowing everybody to dig down to the roots. There are no wrong answers in these conversations. So as Gemma found doing her documentary, you know, you really get to some like really much deeper issues and have some wonderful conversations.
Thank you.
My name's Emmanuel Speaks, and like Ray, I am a spoken word artist and performance poet, and I literally just found out that you could do a degree in it, so thank you for that. But yeah, I myself am doing a degree in economics and politics, second year of university, and I've just come off the back of a countrywide university tour where I've gone around kind of performing spoken word to all these unis, and kind of you may have seen my pieces on platforms such as like Channel 4, SBTV, and you know, a lot of my pieces are kind of centered around the realities in which I've grown up and kind of the socio-economic demographic which I've come from, so that's me.
Okay, good panel. And you are all boys, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely a boy.
Yeah. I'm a girl, just so you know. Firstly, I just want to ask, in your opinion, as maybe older than a lot of the guys that I spoke to, what is the difference between a girl and a boy? Do you think, like, what are the biggest challenges that young men especially are facing right now? And Ray, you know, you all have been to schools, you've been in the thick of it, you work every day with young men. Like, what are you seeing that is very kind of gender specific, actually?
Biologically, obviously, there's those differences. Having a penis is pretty much being a boy. But then I feel like there's so many other ideas that are kind of attached to it, and I feel like so many of those ideas are a kind of performance. And I feel like we're living through a really interesting time, considering how when you look at the economy and you look at this idea of this performance of when men, a lot of it was spoken about in the previous discussion, the previous panel, about how men are the provider, men work with their hands, and how that's changing now that the people who are running the economy are just sitting in front of a computer doing this. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's changing the expectation for kind of being successful. Yeah. And people are looking at that. So I feel like so much of the kind of expression of masculinity isn't actually a biological one. I feel like it is a social conditioned one.
Absolutely, and I definitely felt that. In comparison to the girls' film that I made, which I do urge you to watch if you had any interest in that, whether it lost you at some points or not, I think it's an interesting experiment to watch the girls' version because you feel quite different watching both. And in terms of how I felt, and I questioned myself, I wondered whether it was because I'm female, but I found it a lot more difficult to get the boys to express how they really feel. And that was a challenge to me because I'm a communicator and I revel in expression and I'm an advocate for it. And I'm a feminist, but I'm not more for women than I am for men. So I found it quite challenging and hard to not get the boys to open up. Like you could see it, you know, in the initial, at the beginnings, where they're just, I'm just like, being a man. And it's just like, met with silence. And like, and in terms of a physical reaction, I found that quite upsetting, actually, in terms of, like, generally, when I was speaking to lots of different groups, because everything was so suppressed. And I really didn't feel like that when I was speaking to the girls. It was ready to bubble out.
Do you feel like that's because it's them suppressing it, or is it because they don't actually know what being a man is?
I think it's both. But even, like, in terms of the workshop continuing, I mean, no one knows what being a man is. You're absolutely right. And it's not even a thing, is it? Yeah, like, what is being a man? Yeah. But even when I went specific, even when I asked them to put subject matters onto a Post-it note that we could bring to the table, and it could be anything, and, you know, like sex, girls, all these, like, really, like, exciting things to talk about, it was still met with, like, this, like, pushing down. I don't know whether you identify with that.
This is something that, I mean, I'm very familiar with because I run these workshops all the time. And, I mean, it's, as we've all gone over, it's part of this cultural conditioning. It starts young. We've had the ideas of man up has come up already. You know, how often has someone shown emotion and they've been told to man up? You know, that's not a reaction to get someone, that's not going to help them, that's going to send them into a spiral of depression, in my opinion. And it starts much younger with, you know, sort of when a girl cries, it's sort of, oh, daddy's got you, you know, it's okay, tell me what's wrong. When a boy cries, it's sort of, you know, chin up, stiff upper lip. We start treating children like adults from young. And in my experience, the boys that I work with are deeply aware of this. And likewise, I've had the same experience when it's very difficult to get people opening up at first. But it was only last week that I was in a school and one of the boys said to me, one of the stereotypes of being a man is that you're not supposed to show emotions. I said to the room of 20 boys, is this something we all identify with? All of them said yes. And I said, why is that? And they were like, it's just a stereotype. They were smart boys, year 9, they were clever. They understood this. And I think one of the things that struck me about the video is that so often boys, especially teenage boys, are quite demonised in the UK, especially in our press. We've got terrible press. But the overall image we get of teenage boys are always the negative stories. But there we just saw some tender, sort of innocent young people who were like willing to share but needed to have that coaxed out. And again, that's why I said that in our work we have a discussion. We're not going in to tell people how to behave. We're giving them the space to talk about what behaviour is possible. For me, the idea of being a man, if you ask me to describe being a man, I'll describe to you being an adult. You get to choose your own version of masculinity, of femininity, of adulthood. The only thing that matters to me is that you're not causing anybody harm. And that's a complex discussion because a lot of the ways we've been socialised to behave inadvertently cause harm. The example that's come up so often already today, man up, a lot of people think it's 2 words, it means nothing. You just say it on the street and you move on. You know, people think that's no big deal, but actually that is causing harm. So these conversations do need to be had and they are complicated, but there is also, it's sort of quite simple at the same time.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. Like, of course it's complex. Of course we all react like differently because we're made up of different stuff. But the fact that like we want to discuss it is a healthy thing. I mean, I don't know how you experience in terms of like, I mean, even your mates in terms of like how boys react to each other when it comes to times of being tough, you know, being able to express your feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a place where where masculinity is overexpressed. It's kind of a hyper masculinity. Like you will say to your boys, "Oh my days, I love this girl," and they'll be like, "Oh, you're gay blood." But if you say, "Oh, I love my boys," like, "Yeah, done, no, you what?" Like it just doesn't make sense, and it's a thing where there's expectations from people in my age group which kind of literally don't make sense. Like you'll have boys in like Mercedes and BMWs, and we have girls like, "Oh my days, my boyfriend has to be driving." These times she's only like 17, 18. Like how do you expect your boyfriend or someone that you meet to be reaching those things if they haven't been working for however many years? So kind of it's the expectations from both males and females for young men in our generation which are a bit distorted. And I feel like it's only getting worse as time goes on. You know what
Really?
I mean? Yeah, 100%.
Why?
I'm not too sure. I feel like it's come from kind of our culture in terms of like music, what we aspire to, the things we look up to, the artists we look up to. We see them with all these gold chains, these girls, these cars, and kind of when you're 16, 17, 18, you're thinking, "Oh my days, I want that lifestyle," and that's perpetuated by the girl saying, "Oh my days, I want the person I meet to have this lifestyle," or whoever, or your boy saying, "Oh my days, I want this lifestyle." So you go out and seek these things in any means necessary, and more time, from what I've seen, a lot of young males from where I've come from have seek to gain these things kind of illegally. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of very much a distorted expression of what masculinity is. So it's not about the money. It's not about how much you can lift. It's not about all these things. I don't reckon that's what being a man is, but it's what people from where I've come from kind of look at it as. And I feel like that's kind of worrying as well. So that's something that should be looked at as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Ray, do you experience this like mad core pressure from the young people that you work with, or even yourself, like personally, to kind of have it all? Because I definitely noticed that, and I noticed it with young people in general. I noticed it with the girls that I spoke to. It was different for them. It was like being academically smart, looking incredible, being sexy, being able to hold it down, you know. So it's a young people issue. But it's just like there's this sense of you must have it all. Whatever your archetypal hero is, you must be that. Like to look a certain way, to have the right things. And I do think for boys it's maybe more material. I experience more like I've got to have the right clothes. Like I've got to be able to get the stuff that the rappers I like have?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very real pressure. I think I'm going to talk from the perspective of being a poet, I guess. And I was writing a lot of poetry from when I was about 6, 7 years old, and I did that in private. I wouldn't show that to anyone, partly because so much of my poetry was emotional. I was very aware that to put it out there would be showing a side of me which I needed to protect. Also, I went to a deaf school. I'm hard of hearing. I was learning sign language, so there's all of these things that come into play. And even in the deaf world, there's really interesting gender politics because it's a physical language. It's about signing. And then you can see what signs that have come from hearing people and what signs have come from deaf people. For example, the sign that comes from a hearing person to say woman is just a stroke of a cheek, which is this quite passive expression, whereas a lot of deaf people prefer to do that, the sign of a woman. And it's really like this language, this physical language, whether you're male or female, has to be about taking up that space. It has to be you're making your statement with your body. And I found that because that was also part of my childhood and also part of like how I was exploring the language of how I express myself as a boy, and as someone who loved poetry and as someone who also wanted to act. So it was difficult for me, I think, to find those spaces. So as I got a bit older, I had to coming from Hackney, it's a bit of a complicated one, but I retreated from a lot of my friends who were living up to those certain ideas that you were talking about wearing certain things, being on the road, all of that kind of stuff. And I felt like I went along with that just because that's what was expected of me. But I'd be going home at night, and again, I'm still writing these poems. And it wasn't until I got a bit older, which is what comes with, I think, confidence and knowing yourself and finding your own kind of people who understand that and appreciate that and recognize you for you then find yourself. Otherwise, you're just kind of looking up to these other ideas while you're young. You know, it's a tough, murky pool to push yourself through.
Absolutely, it is. It's tough, it's murky. We can all identify with that. We identify with that in our daily lives as adults or as younger people. But do you think that it is tougher and murkier than it has ever been? This is a discussion that I have quite often. Whenever I discuss my discoveries or the conversations that I have with like young people, and I say that not in a patronizing way, I say that in a passionate way, that these are our leaders of the future. They are incredible. They are going to shape our world and what it will be. So, very important people. But people go, well, I was insecure when I was a teenager. We all are insecure. It is a hard time in your life. But is it harder than ever?
I would say to an extent, hard is a difficult one to say, but I think whatever conditions young people are coming into have been put on like hyperdrive by the internet. I talk about this all the time. It is naive to believe that an epoch-changing event which you rely upon for everyday interactions and sits in your pocket for most people is not going to change the way in which it impacts young people. This is the first generation growing up with the internet. And I get this a lot from schools. I get boys who have these amazing insights into gender identity and politics and can give me, the most incredible analogy of the difference between gender and sex that clearly they could only got from going online. But we also have boys who have been exposed to some very dark and negative places on the internet. It's a source of both those things. And I think that rapid commercialization and sort of this faster world that we live in is only going to exacerbate all the existing gender norms that we have. Saturation to media and these pressures are going to hit you. I mean, in case anyone's in any doubt, one of the examples that always stuck with me was somebody saying, when you watch a horror movie, sometimes afterwards you get scared of a bump in the night. You know there's not an alien in your cupboard, but it still freaks you out a bit. Likewise, that's sort of watching, 2 hours of a film. we have that 24/7 at a rate that's never happened before. And if you look at all the pressures that we've just been talking about, that makes up 99% of that content. Like, there is so little out there that is trying to go against that grain. And so the pressure on children from that, I think, is immense.
Yeah. I just want to add to that as well, because as a teacher, someone who's spent a lot of time in the classrooms, I found this really interesting. When I go into schools, I might, go into the staff room and I'll be like to a teacher, oh, wow, that class was great, particularly these students. I've heard this a few times now, and the teacher goes, cyberbully. This whole dynamic, this whole new layer of kind of how you create your identity is, I think it's really intense, and I think in many ways, it's more difficult to fit yourself into this kind of mold.
Yeah. And I think that some grown-ups have, in terms of grown-ups in power especially, have given up on trying to understand it. I think that the discussion is too hard, the emotions are too raw, the fear is too big, and it makes me fearful for the fact that the conversations aren't really happening, no matter how complex they might be. I would like to ask you, in terms of education, because it keeps coming back up again, in terms of all these people that I spoke to were in school, I noticed a huge academic pressure to add on top of cyber pressure, wanting to have it all, material pressure, advertising, Black Friday, whatever, But there is this also, which is something new, I definitely feel, this madness about being able to be an A-grade student. Otherwise, it will ruin your entire life. Like, I've been told verbatim that if you don't get A grades, that a whole life will be over, which I think is terrifying from a 14-year-old. I was a little shit, sorry to swear, but I really was not a good student, but I was experiencing life and I didn't necessarily care about my schoolwork. That has completely changed. Everybody is terrified. What do you think needs to be changed in terms of the education system?
I remember doing my GCSEs and feeling like I had to literally ace it to be something in life. And I've got to kind of university and almost finish university, and literally GCSEs feel like nothing. They feel like literally so far away, as if they were so minimal compared to what I'm doing now. So I feel like also seeing people around me who haven't actually gone to university, who haven't actually taken the route that I've taken, also do well for themselves. I feel like kids in school need to be shown that there is more than one avenue to success. It isn't always just academic, because there's always more than one way to kill a cat. Do you know what I mean? You haven't always got to get straight A's or go through university to get to a certain place in life.
It's impossible for every young person to be able to get A's.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, I was in a school in Durham where they were telling me that you could go and get your lunch in the canteen, and there was a countdown to their GCSEs, and they were in year 9.
That's crazy. The pressure is ridiculous, and I'm going to be in the speed mentoring of a lot of the boys yesterday, and Gemma's just stolen, tomorrow even, in a minute's time after this, Gemma's stolen a lot of my ideas for that, which is to say, a B is a good grade. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. An A is the absolute top. That's really hard to get. A B is good. And also something that I learned from a discussion I had recently about a lot of men talking together about how to be role models. This was specifically role models for black boys in the UK, so I was very privileged to be invited to the conversation to listen. But one of the points that someone came up with there is that when someone says to you the phrase, you can be whatever you want to be, what does that elicit in you? When you say that, we say, you can be anything you want, you can achieve whatever if you put your mind to it. You think CEO, start my own business, footballer, director of a movie. Listen to what that phrase means. Whatever you want to be. A postman. It could be being an accountant in a medium-sized enterprise. Those are still good jobs. That's still what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But we live in a world where you're constantly encouraged to believe that's negative, and that the only option is the top. There's so few seats at the top, but the rest of it, there's plenty of space. And also, it allows you to do other things. If you want to work a 9 to 5 job, that's great, because it means you can go home at 5 and do something you care about. You could go home and paint. You could go home and run. You could go home and write poetry. There's so many other options out there, and I'm really pleased there are young people here who get to hear this, because I know that I didn't, and from the experience of us, it's something that we probably didn't hear. And that's a conversation that will continue in the mentoring.
I'm sorry, but I got an E in maths, and everything's fine. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. Yeah, I think fundamentally, like, we need to be having like big conversations, swirling conversations, complex ones. Let boys cry, let boys question, and let boys feel things, because, you know, like, the really scary opposite is I hosted a Q&A post the Professor Green BBC 3 documentary recently, which is about male suicide, and again, it was very complex, but one of the main things that I got from it was it's men. The reason why it's still the biggest killer for men is that it's men not being able to express, and a desperateness to express and being able to say how they feel. So I think we do need to be gender fluid, and all of the new words that are coming in, like, embrace them, go with it, find your own rhythm within it, and just let people, young people especially, speak, because it's a noisy, loud, difficult time to work yourself out. But that's okay. It can be okay. But we have to really, really stick together, I think. That's me. That's me. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, lovely panel.
Thank Gemma and a great panel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.